Headlights sliced through the thick swirling snow glaring across my yard. Tires skidded, metal groaned, and a deafening crunch rattled the quiet night. I froze, pressed to the window, heart hammering coffee forgotten on the counter. The black SUV idled, engine growling, exhaust curling into the icy air. She stepped out, hood pulled, low boots crunching on the packed snow, eyes locked on the snowman she'd destroyed before. Her smug grin made my blood run cold. But then I noticed it. The crooked smile on that snowman didn't look quite the same. My pulse spiked. She had no idea what she'd just triggered, and what happened next? We could change everything. Nancy had a way of appearing before you even realized she was there. One minute the street was quiet, the next she was striding down the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning, assessing, judging. She didn't just follow rules, she invented them. Every holiday, every decoration, every little imperfection was a personal affront in her mind. The first time I met her in that way, she was glaring at my mailbox. "Your house numbers aren't centered," she said, voice clipped like it was a crime scene instead of a suburban street. She didn't wait for me to respond, just scribbled on her clipboard and walked away, leaving me blinking in the cold. I'd learned quickly Nancy thrived on control. Her rules were armor, her smirk a weapon, and I had become her favorite project. She watched, waiting for mistakes, savoring them like candy. That night, as I stared at the flattened remains of the snowman, her SUV gone from view, I remembered the glint in her eye when she first approached. That small, smug smile that said, "I can take whatever I want, and you can't stop me." She didn't just enforce the HOA, she owned it. And she was perfectly willing to let me know in every crunch of tires and deliberate glance exactly where I stood. I moved to this neighborhood thinking I had finally found the quiet life I'd been chasing for years. After the constant noise of the city, the honking, the traffic, the endless crowd of strangers, I wanted streets that felt safe, houses that felt private, and snow that could fall without being trampled into gray slush the second it landed. My little house with its modest yard felt like a sanctuary, and for a time, it was exactly that. Mornings were simple: coffee steaming in my hands, a glance out the window at the soft glow of streetlights reflecting on the frost. Afternoons I spent in my workshop fixing or building, relishing the control I had in a world that was otherwise chaotic. Evenings brought Emma, my 7-year-old niece, full of energy and imagination, her laughter echoing as we built snowmen or decorated the house for whatever season demanded it. Life felt manageable, almost idyllic. Then Nancy arrived. At first, it was subtle, almost laughable, slips of paper under the door, notes about mailbox placement, a critique about the symmetry of my house numbers. I thought, fine, rules are rules, but it quickly escalated. Her presence was like a shadow following me through my own yard. Halloween decorations were too gaudy. The summer grill was too visible from the street. Every holiday she inspected, measured, judged. Her clipboard wasn't a tool, it was a weapon. Her eyes scanned for imperfection, her smile thin and knowing. I realized quickly she didn't enforce the rules. She enforced her control. Then came the snowman. Emma and I spent an entire afternoon crafting it. We laughed, pressed coal eyes into the round head shaped a crooked carrot nose, and wrapped her favorite scarf around its neck. That night, headlights cut through the darkness. The black SUV rolled slowly onto my lawn, and in minutes the snowman was gone, flattened and cold. A clear message: nothing that brought me joy would survive her attention. I sat in the kitchen long after Emma went to bed, staring at the empty patch of snow, heart pounding. Peace in this neighborhood had a price, and Nancy had decided I was going to pay it. But I wasn't helpless. I knew I couldn't reason with her, I couldn't plead or warn. I could only outthink her, and as I traced the tire tracks fading into the snow, I felt something solid take root inside me, a quiet, deliberate resolve. I would show her what happens when someone tries to control what doesn't belong to them. It began subtly, almost innocuously. A folded note slid under my door: "Your lawn decorations are not compliant. Fix immediately." I laughed at first, thinking it was just a strict HOA rule. Then came another. My mailbox was misaligned, my welcome mat off-centered. At first I shrugged it off, but the unease stayed. Late one night I spotted headlights rolling down the street. Her black SUV paused across from my yard, engine idling. A shadow moved along the fence line. Someone had been walking around my property while I slept. My skin crawled. Even during the day I felt watched. Every glance toward the street made me tense, every distant hum of an engine set my nerves on edge. When Emma arrived to help build a snowman that weekend, I forced a smile, hiding the tight knot of fear in my chest. What was once innocent play now felt like a potential trigger, and I knew Nancy was watching, waiting, plotting. Then it escalated. One evening her SUV rolled deliberately onto my driveway, the tires crushed freshly shoveled snow as she stepped out clipboard in hand, snapping photos of my snowman and yard. Her eyes caught mine sharp, assessing daring me to speak. She had no business on my property yet, she acted like she owned it. A few nights later, footprints appeared along the perimeter, evidence she had prowled under cover of darkness. Then came the emails, thinly veiled threats framed as HOA compliance warnings. Harmless acts, a small snowman, a wreath, were twisted into supposed violations. She misrepresented every detail, weaponizing rules to unsettle me. Even Greg, my neighbor, noticed. "She's not strict, she's obsessed," he muttered as we shoveled. I realized my home, my sanctuary, had become a stage for her games. Every shadow, every tire track, every scratch in the snow reminded me she could strike at any time. And with every strike, the stakes felt higher, the air heavier, the tension impossible to ignore. I woke to a nightmare in the dead of night. The crunch of metal against packed snow, the soft give of frozen ground, the unmistakable sound of something being destroyed. I ran to the window and saw it, my snowman, the one Emma and I had spent hours building, flattened limbs, scattered scarf, twisted coal, eyes gone. My stomach churned. The security footage confirmed what I already feared. Her SUV had crept down the street, headlights off, slowed to a crawl, then rammed into the snowman with deliberate force. Twice. The second impact was worse, pushing the fragile structure into a heap of icy rubble. She reversed casually and drove away, leaving chaos in her wake. It didn't stop there. My mailbox was knocked sideways, the grill dented, and my security camera's lens had been tampered with. Even the smallest joys, Emma's laughter, the pride of our work, were now targets. The violation felt personal, invasive, and deliberate. I realized she wasn't just enforcing rules, she was waging war. Every innocent act in my yard became fair game. Every small pleasure, every display of care or joy was a provocation in her eyes. The line between petty HOA enforcement and outright harassment had vanished. By mid-morning, desperation had set in. I called the HOA office, hoping someone else might intervene, someone who understood the pattern of harassment. Nancy herself answered, her voice unnervingly calm, almost smug. "Mark, I don't see a problem here. Just snow." I tried to explain the SUV rolling onto my lawn, the crushed snowman, the tampered security camera, but she laughed sharp and dismissive, cutting me off before I could finish. Every word was a reminder that rules, fairness, and reason were powerless against her. Later that day, the sheriff arrived. She had filed a complaint claiming I had trespassed on my own property. The officers were polite but firm. Without definitive evidence, they couldn't act. I watched as she smiled the way predators do when they know the law favors them. It was unnerving to see how completely she had manipulated the system, twisting facts to make me appear irrational, even threatening. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering, but fear kept them silent. Each car driving past, each shadow crossing the street, set my nerves on edge. My sanctuary had become a cage. I realized then that if I wanted peace, I couldn't rely on authority or rules. I had to take matters into my own hands, and the plan forming in my mind was quiet, deliberate, and unstoppable. That night, I set my plan into motion. In my workshop, the rhythmic clink of metal and the hiss of welding filled the air as I built the snowman's hidden core. Steel rods, rebar, and tightly packed ice formed a skeleton so strong it could withstand any attack. To the naked eye, it looked ordinary, fragile, innocent. Emma's snowman, complete with coal eyes, a crooked carrot nose, and a bright scarf. I set up the camera, adjusting angles so every approach, every move in the yard would be captured. Hours passed. Snow drifted lazily, covering footprints and erasing evidence. My pulse thumped in rhythm with the quiet hum of the heater. I knew she would come. She always came. At midnight, headlights cut through the snowfall. The black SUV rolled forward, engine growling, tires spinning on ice, poised to crush the snowman as before. I pressed my forehead to the window, heart hammering, hands trembling but controlled. She drove closer, hesitated. Her eyes narrowed at the snowman, confusion flickering across her face. She circled it, tapped it lightly, stepped back. For the first time, she didn't have control. Her smirk faltered. And as she muttered under her breath and reversed, I realized something crucial. She had no idea what she'd stumbled into. Tomorrow, everything would change. The stage was set, and the predator had unknowingly walked into a trap she could never see coming. The headlights cut through the night, reflecting off the frozen snow, like spotlights on a stage. I could hear the faint hum of tires on ice before I even saw her SUV slow to a crawl in front of the yard. Nancy stepped out, hood-up boots crunching in the snow. She glared at the snowman, her usual smirk replaced with confusion. I stepped onto the porch, coffee in hand, heart steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "You came back," I said quietly. She didn't respond, just pointed at the snowman. "You built that thing to destroy my car," she shrieked. I tilted my head, calm. "It's just snow." I gestured toward the camera, its red light blinking steadily. Her eyes flicked to it, then back to the snowman. She froze. I could see the gears turning in her mind. The neighbors had begun opening their windows, murmuring, watching. The tension was thick, a palpable pause in the cold night. For the first time, she wasn't in control. I was. And she could feel it. I gestured toward the camera, letting the red recording light do the talking. "Everything is documented," I said, evenly, voice calm but carrying weight. "Every time you drove onto my property, destroyed my snowmen, harassed me, you left a trail." Her eyes flicked nervously toward the device, then back at the snowman. I pulled my phone from my pocket and played the footage. Headlights creeping down the street, tires grinding through the snow, the SUV mounting my lawn, flattening the snowman Emma and I had built. Not once, but twice. The footage was grainy, but undeniable. A murmur ran through the neighbors, who had gathered, some peeking from windows, others quietly filming themselves. The tension was electric. Nancy's smug expression faltered, replaced by something sharper: panic. That's not fair. You set me up," she shrieked. I shook my head slowly. "You chose to destroy private property. Every action has consequences. I only recorded what you did." The sheriff leaned closer, eyes narrowing as he watched the footage, then examined the flattened snowman, the tire tracks etched into the yard. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "you were on his property. You caused damage. This isn't about snow, it's destruction of private property." Her mouth opened, but no words came. I could see the realization hit the game she thought she was winning had already ended. Nancy's eyes darted around the yard, then back at me. You did this on purpose?" she stammered. Her voice cracked, panic now fully visible. "It's a trap. That thing, he set me up." I took a slow step forward, coffee in hand. "I didn't set you up. You chose to destroy what wasn't yours. Every action has consequences." The sheriff called for her to gather her things. Her SUV, now partially crumpled from the reinforced snowman impact, was being documented for towing. Neighbors murmured, some shaking their heads, others smiling quietly at the irony. Greg stepped outside, muttering, "Guess the snowman wins," her face twisted in fury, hands trembling. "You'll regret this," she spat. "No, Nancy," I said, calmly meeting her gaze. "We're finally even." The officers escorted her toward her car, ensuring she couldn't interfere further. The crowd began to disperse, whispers floating through the night air about HOA, tyranny, and karma, finally catching up. I lingered by the snowman, watching the snowflakes settle, melting slowly into the reinforced ice. For the first time in months, the street felt calm, safe. I took a deep breath, letting it fill my lungs, warming against the cold. Justice had a quiet weight to it, heavier, and more satisfying than I'd imagined. The snowman stood tall, crooked grin, intact, a silent witness to the night. Everything changed. The night air was cold, but the tension had finally lifted. I stood by the snowman, watching the faint steam rise from the crushed SUV, my breath misting in the light of the porch. I had expected satisfaction, maybe a small rush of triumph, but what I felt was something quieter, steadier relief. Months of anxiety, of feeling watched and cornered, melted in that moment. For the first time, my yard felt like my own again. Neighbors cautiously emerged from behind curtains and doors, murmuring, some clapping softly, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Greg gave me a nod and a grin. "Looks like winter justice finally showed up," he whispered. Children peered from their windows, whispering about the snowman, unaware of its secret strength but sensing its victory. For the first time in months, the street felt alive in a healthy, warm way. Laughter returned. The cold tension that had hung over the neighborhood was gone, replaced by quiet chatter and soft smiles. People approached me, sharing stories of other petty abuses they'd endured under Nancy's reign. For months they had been afraid to speak. Now, emboldened by what had happened, they began to reclaim their own freedom. I knelt beside the snowman, brushing a layer of fresh snow off its reinforced surface. Emma's laughter echoed in my memory, and I imagined her running back to the yard, wide-eyed, seeing her favorite winter friend still standing. It was a simple joy, but one I had fought hard to preserve. By morning, the repercussions were underway. Nancy's SUV was towed, her statements recorded, and she faced a formal citation for destruction of property. The sheriff confirmed the video evidence, making her prior false claims irrelevant. The HOA board called an emergency meeting without her restructuring the organization and stripping her of all authority. Financial penalties followed swiftly. She was required to pay restitution for the damaged SUV and the repairs to my yard. Any attempts to influence or intimidate neighbors moving forward were strictly prohibited, backed by legal restraining measures. The community collectively breathed easier, knowing the predator who had manipulated rules and law was no longer in control. Neighbors shared quiet conversations about her past actions, realizing her pattern extended beyond me. The HOA itself was forced to implement stricter oversight, ensuring no single person could wield unchecked power again. The ruling was clear: her reign of petty terror was over, dismantled through evidence, patience, and calculated strategy. For me, seeing the snowman still standing as a silent witness felt like a small victory, a symbol that careful planning and measured action could triumph over cruelty, even when the system seemed powerless. Weeks later, Emma returned, skipping across the snow with her mittens bright against the gray winter. She ran straight to the snowman, eyes sparkling. "You built another one," she exclaimed, spinning in a circle with delight. I smiled. "This one's special," I said, brushing a layer of snow off its head. Its reinforced interior remained a secret, an unseen shield of justice. The snowman had become a symbol not just of defiance, but of the community reclaiming its voice. As I looked down the street, the neighborhood had changed. Windows were open again, neighbors chatting freely, holiday lights displayed without fear, laughter spilling into the air. Nancy's house sat silent and empty, her influence evaporated like frost in the morning sun. A small poetic twist came later when a local news outlet ran a light-hearted story: "Snowman stops SUV neighborhood justice in winter wonderland." Nobody mentioned names, but everyone knew. Her obsession with control had been the very thing that led to her public embarrassment and financial ruin. I leaned back on the porch, coffee warm in my hands, snowflakes dusting my jacket. The world outside glistened under a soft gray sky, quiet, safe, and just. I whispered to the snowman a private line to my silent ally: "Sometimes the coldest winters bring the warmest victories." And for the first time in months, I believed it.